Rescue Ace scores a 7-0 victory finish, and is that the power of the new the illustrious illusionist, archetype? Yes, it is. Don't be like 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that subscribe button. Smash it so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. We have the Mechaba Cup breakdown for you here. And I think that this is actually incredibly interesting just to kind of see how the metagame has shaped up for a lot of these top decks here. We have Rescue Ace locking down a first place finish. Going 7-0 is not a particularly easy, goal. After smashing through 4 rounds of Swiss and then another 3 through Top Cut, I actually think that that's pretty impressive at the end of the day, especially how we've seen a lot of the metagame, shape up. A lot of people aren't necessarily looking at Rescue Ace right now going, wow, that's the deck that I want to play as a top competitor. No, actually, most people are looking at that and going, how is Rescue Ace actually performing right now? And I think the answer is obviously emergency. The fact that they kept those 2 cards quiet, I think, did add a lot of flavor to what this deck actually wants to do. Now, we also had a Scareclaw deck make its way into Top Cut. This is actually kind of an interesting build because we're not doing any like the Mana Diem shenanigans that the deck is kind of, been engineered to do now. We're actually just kind of straight Scareclaw, which is actually kind of scary that, this build has kind of come back out here and showcasing a lot of power, actually. We also had Altergeist. Altergeist turned into the new flavor of the month as well. That new Altergeist support, they just had to give them a couple of good cards, and it looks like it was good enough to get the deck revolutionized and put it back on its feet. So I actually think that that's incredibly good to know. And then, of course, it's just not an event without a Purely player doing well, right? Like, as of late, Purely has turned into this deck that just really takes players, like, to the maximum grind game. An Indestructible Nor is a pain in the butt. All right, we're going to pass on over to Top Cut. The event was none other than Rescue Ace here. Now, the first thing that catches me off guard with this list is we're only playing 2 copies of Emergency. Every other version of this deck that I have seen be successful right now has been playing multiple copies of it. So I do think that that's something to really consider out here, is the amount of emergencies that you're going to want to be playing in terms of this. Now, we are playing 1 of each of like your power cards: 1 alert, 1 rescue, 1 reinforce, 1 extinguish, 1 contain. Those are going to be usually your more accessible ones. Obviously, the goal is to get to the big guy, set all 4, and then you're kind of off to the races. I mean, is it necessarily fair? No, but I have noticed that a majority of the builds are just really playing a small amount of them. Their entire goal is, once you usually get that huge advantage tree off, you should be winning the game. It usually is enough to put the deck into an advantage loop, and I will say that, once you kind of start that grind game against your opponent's not really going to have a good chance to recover. Also, shout out to 1 Pot of Extravagance in this deck. Even if you're just playing the 1 copy, it still says draw 2 cards. I mean, the rest of the deck just doesn't care. Like, you want as much draw power as you can actually kind of get with this deck. So I think that's kind of important to kind of recognize, at least in terms of that. So good stuff for this. Next up is our good old Scareclaw deck. Now, like I said at the beginning of this video, we're not playing Prisma, we're not playing any of the stuff that wants to expedite the process to see Vice of Starfrost. Actually, this is back to the bare minimum. I do see that we are playing 1 Arise Heart, though, with 1 Fenrir, 1 Unicorn. So you will have access to the more unfun side of things, aka, look, mommy, I can make, the power of Arise Heart and start the Banish pile. Also, because you're able to extend out so many cards. A Soldier of Chaos. Can we talk about how busted Soldier of Chaos is for a deck like this? The fact that your opponent's not going to be able to have an out to that thing, I think is going to put you in a pretty game-winning position. We are also playing Dark Ruler No Mores in here. Don't underestimate the power of some good board breakers. I think that's going to put yourself into a very, very strong position in itself usually, especially with how this format has shaped up. A good board breaker should be enough to kind of put put you into a leading position. Also, Santa Claus is to break the annoying little cats. Trust me when I say this, dealing with the cat deck is not something that this deck is going to want to have a good time doing. Alright, but outside of that, I mean, the fact that you have access to a Rise Heart is like a hard make, also you can make Soldier of Chaos in this deck. Once again, your toolboxing options have massively expanded on out here for this deck. So, good stuff with that. Next up here, we have Altergeist in the smallest picture that I think that I have ever seen in terms of a deck profile. Now, the first thing that catches me off guard here is we are playing, I believe that is either the new Altergeist card or weight measuring. It's probably Altergeist support overall. Also, one big thing about this list, we are actually playing the red, the one that lets you attack directly and draw a card. I have not seen any other Altergeist list out of a majority of this weekend giving 2 craps to actually play that card. And the fact that this list comes out of nowhere and goes, we're going to challenge some of the overall mentalities at this point in time, that's pretty good. Also, we're playing Summon Limit. I can't tell you, a lot of decks in the format aren't going to have a fun time playing against Summon Limit, especially when you've got Rivalry and, the rest of the Trap Squad going for you in here as well. We are playing 1-for-1 with Double Pot of Prosperity. I mean, Double Pot's going to get you filtering options. 3 Pot of Prosperity, I guess, would be the one case where you'd consider wanting to play multiples, but that's fine. We're only playing 1 Marionette or 2. I suppose the 1 Marionetter is fine. It's not going to break the bank too hard, I feel like. I'm just trying to bulk down and play some additional copies. But outside of that, this deck feels kind of interesting. I like a lot of the options that this is trying to bring to the table. It does definitely open up the door for some very, very interesting ideas at the end of the day. So, once again, I like what I'm seeing. Altergeist is just one of those decks that's kind of come into a good place here. Next up is our Purely list. Oh boy. This build maximized on 1 more extra Shaddoll than we're really used to seeing at this point in time. So we have, the Earth Shaddoll in here, 1 Squamato with 1 copy of the Draw Some Cards. I also see that we are playing Karikara in here with some Lances for defensive options. And then, of course, we are playing 1 Thrust to toggle into the Talents. Interesting enough, though, this build is not messing around with Dimensional Barrier in the main deck. A lot of builds right now have been going for that. Actually, we're just citing the 1 Dimensional Barrier down in the side deck. That's really about the only thing that you can do to try to get some sort of advantage off in the mirror match, is the ability to try to toggle for that so you can kind of, scale back and try to win the game. Because trust me when I say this, getting Dimensional Barrier usually does put you in an incredibly good position. But if you don't actually, have in the main deck, you'll never get that chance to see it. So that's interesting. Now, this event also had a side tournament, which actually had Trickstar actually show up and do well. Wow. We actually had triple Inspector Border in our Trickstar deck. So what you're telling me is I can either do full trick. Oh, wait, no. I can just ping my opponent for damage. Because, good old advantage engines. We are playing 2 Scapegoat in this deck, though, which I actually kind of like. Scapegoat gives this deck some free ground to actually punish the opponent. And by punish them, I mean you get to set up, any real link monster that you want here. Your opponent's not going to be able to do anything about it. I also see that we are playing 1 G-Golem Earthheart in here. That's going to be a stepping stone, effectively, for Trickstar to be able to take advantage of. Some crackdowns. We're playing Herald of Abysses for the cat. Yeah. Everything here looks, pretty standard, actually. Thinking about, the former Trickstar builds, yeah, I think that this is pretty on point. And then we also had this interesting combo deck. This is the new Illusionist archetype, aka sporting off Gazelle and Baphomet here. Now, the combo lines with the Fusion getting the ability to banish itself from the graveyard to bring up Gazelle and Baphomet actually has made this deck the chance to do some really cool things. Also, the ability to make Guardian Chimera during the opponent's turn for a form of interruptions. The deck hasn't been too crazy off the ground, but players have been kind of looking at this as of late, the different combo lines, and it has piqued a lot of interest from players overall. So I do mean this when I say this, but this deck is really cool. Alright, just the interactions and things that you're able to set up with this is so incredibly cool. It really has gone to show that there are so many cool ideas that are really kind of fluctuating out here. It's really cool. So what do you guys think about the Mechaba cup? Please leave a comment down below. Tell me what you guys think. And I'll see your beautiful faces back here later today, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.